Last night, our district had a devastating loss with the passage of one of our Lakeland students, Joseph Padahowski, who passed away. Our school's crisis response team has been prepared to support students and staff as we process this tragedy. In addition to that, members of the Huron Valley School Counseling Support Group will have been assisting all of us in ways that we need to navigate this difficult time. Our thoughts and prayers are with the Padahowski family and our entire school community, as we know this affects all of us in different ways. Please join all of us in a moment of silence for Joseph and his entire family as a sign of our community's support during these difficult times. Thank you very much. With that, Secretary Pestana, could I have a roll call, please?
Miss Ryan.
Here.
Miss Dodd.
Here.
I am present. Mr. Dimick.
Here.
Miss Cotter.
Here.
Miss Grzymkowski. Absent. And Mr. Wiseman.
Here. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands.
We have before us the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
And I'll support that.
Motion made by Member Dimick, seconded by Member Cotter. Seeing no objections, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Dimick.
Yes.
Miss Cotter.
Yes.
I am a yes. Miss Dodd.
Yes.
Miss Ryan.
Yes.
Mr. Wiseman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next is communications and reports from the board president. Before I begin with that, as always, we have citizen participation forms in the back. Thank you to all of you for attending our Huron Valley Board of Education meeting. As always, we welcome our Huron Valley community's input and comments. A public comment section will be available for 15 minutes, which include both action and non-action items during section 3 of the agenda. Additional comments, if necessary, will take place during section 7 of the agenda. If you have any comments or concerns as it relates to the agenda or non-agenda items, please fill out the requested information and pass them on to Ms. Cadell, and I will recognize you. At that time, participants will have 3 minutes to present their comments. When recognized by myself, this is a time for us to hear your comments, but not for the Board of Education to enter into a conversation. If appropriate, I will pass those comments on to the superintendent, who will take care of the comments and address those comments accordingly. So with that, items from the Board of Education. Last board meeting, I had the distinct pleasure of recognizing Member Ryan for achieving board certification by achieving and recognizing and completing all 100 classes. There are 9 of them. They include fundamentals of school business services, governing policy, school finance, school law, curriculum instruction, community relations, labor relations, legislation, and data-informed decision-making. Tonight, it gives me great pleasure to recognize Member Dimick for also achieving that award. This is quite an accomplishment because both of the board members, Ms. Ryan and Mr. Dimick, have been on the board for less than a year and have achieved this award. By doing that, we as a board now will be honored in April as an honor board. The Honor Board Award is given to boards when all members have achieved that certification status. Based on my history of this district, I believe this is the first time that our Board of Education has been recognized as such. So with that, I congratulate each and every one of you for doing and taking those classes. I think it certainly reflects the professionalism of this board, how important it is to be a highly effective board, because we recognize the importance that we play in making certain that our students receive the very best of an education and the opportunities afforded to them by our staff and by our community. So once again, as president of the board, I'd like to recognize each and every one of you for that achievement. A job well done. With that, I'll turn that over to the agenda over to recognitions and Dr. Salah.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Ms. Rothler.
Good evening. As you are aware, within Huron Valley Schools, there are numerous dedicated educators and staff who genuinely impact the lives of our students. Many consistently go above and beyond, often serving as a lifeline to our students. Tonight, we want to acknowledge one of these exceptional individuals. I would like to invite Assistant Director of Student Support Services, Rachel Parody, to join me in introducing one of our outstanding staff members.
I'm small, sorry. Dr. Salah, board members, and HVS community. I'm here today representing myself and Heather Peden, principal at Lakewood Elementary, to recognize Danielle Larsch for her commitment to children. Heather could not be here this evening, but she did want to say a couple things about this amazing teacher. Danielle is an ASD teacher at Lakewood Elementary. She is a master of her craft and not only tailors her lessons to meet the needs of her individual students, but puts emphasis into getting to know her students so that she can put them on the path to success. When I arrived at Lakewood, I was very clear that my vision for the ASD program was to make sure the students in this program were general education students first. Danielle jumped right on the train and has been making this vision come alive with her strong leadership skills. With 3 constantly growing resource rooms, Danielle serves as a mentor for both of the other teachers, which involves after-hours coaching sessions, meetings, and phone calls. She has met and worked with district leaders to advocate for resources to support the students in the ASD program. Danielle is kind, caring, a great listener, and most of all, a great human to everyone. So for me, this is the second year that I have had the pleasure of working with Danielle. To say that she has had a challenging year, especially last year, is an understatement. The fact that she came to school every day was not gone unseen. When we talked about this year, I was really afraid she was not going to want to come back. I can't explain the relief, the joy, the gratitude I had when she said that she would do it. This year, she has taken a leadership role of steering our ship of our ASD program at Lakewood. Danielle is an advocate for the program and has been a conduit between general education and the students in her classroom. She has been an incredible asset to the building, to our students, and to Huron Valley. I can't thank her enough for all she does, and I'm so very proud to recognize you today.
First, we'll see if the board has any questions or comments.
Oh, a question. Okay.
Any comments, questions? Yes. Ms. Cotter?
I just have a comment because this particular program, it's had a few different homes over the years, but I'm so proud of you that you've made a home for those students at Lakewood. Thanks for all you do.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Salah?
Just 1,000% agree with everything that Ms. Parody shared. Danielle, truly, I don't know where we'd be this year if you were not at Lakewood Elementary School. Your mentorship, the quality of the programming is synonymous. Your name is mentioned every time we talk about the quality of the programming. So I just can't emphasize that enough, how grateful we are to you, what you do on behalf of students. What you do on behalf of students every single day, it means an extraordinary amount to the school district, certainly to the families of the children that attend schools there and the children themselves. So thank you for what you do every day.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I see some flowers over there. Are those yours, Danielle? Huh?
Yes.
Boy, do you get flowers every day?
No, I do not. If I could, I would.
You should.
If I
You
could, I
should get
would.
flowers. You should get much more than that every day. We certainly appreciate everything you've done, and we certainly appreciate the hard work, the effort, and our students are certainly blessed at Lakewood to have you. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Barb, would you like to have a picture?
Yep. So we just want to go. Do you want to do one with the board?
Yep, we'll take a picture of you with the board.
Next on our agenda was a presentation by White Lake Middle School English learners. They are not going to present tonight. They're going to present at a future board meeting. Look forward to them. I think it's important to note that I represented the board the other day in front of their classroom. And trust me, I didn't scare them off, okay? We had a great meeting. We had a great talk about their presentation. And they invite all of you to visit their classroom in the future, because I found out that we have 14 English learners and 11 former English learners representing 12 different languages over at White Lake Middle School in that class. Very diverse group. And one of the things they love to do, and they've challenged us, and I'm asking somebody to come along with me, at least one, they love playing Uno. And they find that Uno is something that really helps them learn the English language. I know my family's played Uno, and I don't know if that's the language they should be learning necessarily. But there's an open invite for any or all of us to come over. And at our future board meeting, they'll be presenting. So I'm just giving you a little bit of inside information when they do present that they do love playing Uno. So that was my takeaway. But trust me that they're not here tonight because I scared them away. They've just asked to have an excused absence, and they'll be at a future board meeting. Next, Superintendent's Communication, Strategic Plan 2.0 and Audit Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we have Strategic Plan 2.0 at a couple of points in the agenda. First here under my superintendent remarks, and then under new business, where we will hear the final recommendation from the committee that was reached at our last meeting on November 29th. My comments this evening regarding Strategic Plan 2.0 are more so around just timeline, and I want to address one of the questions that I've heard sort of circulating out there. I tend to do this under my superintendent remarks. So first and foremost, we have a few members of that Strategic Plan 2.0 committee here in the audience. I want to thank you for carving out some time this evening to be here and just supporting the process. It's so important to see your faces here this evening. I want to take a moment and I want to thank our Board of Education. We do things a little different around here, and I don't know, you sort of take that for granted when you live in the middle of it every single day. But in a lot of school districts, they'll simply assign an ad hoc board member to attend committee meetings to quote unquote represent the board. We tend not to do that here because our board wants to be well informed. They want to hear the questions, the deliberations, the discussions that transpire, because they know that at the end of the day, they're going to have to take action on the recommendation that's before them. I really applaud our board's efforts to make as many of those meetings as humanly possible. I mean, certainly life gets in the way and you can't make every single thing, but 90% of our board was at the vast majority of every one of those meetings over the course of 6 months, which is a tremendous commitment. Our board members are not compensated. They have, to be on the board. They have full-time jobs, family commitments, and they make it a point to support their communities with this sort of work. And so I just think that's important for the community to hear and to know and to understand, because it's not as if the board is going to hear this recommendation for the first time this evening. And I think that's important for the community to know. So one of the questions that's been out there, we actually just updated the frequently asked questions document today with a response to this question because it's been posed a few times over the last week and a half or so. And that question is, why is this process so quote unquote rushed? Meaning, why does the board have to make a decision in December? And I just want to speak to that a little bit this evening. I think it's important for our listening audience, those who are here today and those who are watching at home, to know and understand that this process has been ongoing since September of 2020. 2022. So we've been engaged in strategic planning for the last 15 months. I know how challenging it is to be a parent. I have 3 children of my own. I know what it's like to get 3 different emails from 3 different schools and be responsible for reading and reviewing all of that information and keeping up with extracurricular activities and athletics. And sometimes it can be hard to lose track of a process like Strategic Plan 2.0. But I think it's important to highlight how much communication and how much time and energy and effort has gone into ensuring that the communication has been clear, concise, and transparent from the very beginning. I also think it's really important to lift and recognize that we don't make decisions like this, like the Strategic Plan 2.0 recommendation. We don't make those decisions lightly. It's after thoughtful deliberation. It's after engaging, in some instances, a third party like Plant Moran to provide data points for us to help us make informed decisions. And in this instance, this recommendation comes from a committee made up of about 50 people. It doesn't come from any single one person. These weren't conversations that took place in a vacuum. And as I mentioned, you also have 7 elected board members that are responsible to ensure that there is clear processes in place so that when a recommendation is made, that it isn't one voice or a quote unquote special agenda or anything like that. So I just I feel like it's important to be transparent and just address that sort of question that we ultimately, I'm not surprised to get. I mean, you get those kinds of questions every once in a while. So while committees are important and have been engaged in this process, as well as your Board of Education, we also felt that we needed to double and really triple down on the communication mechanisms that we've put in place. And so I just want to share what some of those are. Over the course of the last 15 months or so, from a communications perspective, we've had 3 articles that have discussed strategic planning in the quarterly Education Matters newsletter that was mailed to all homes in the district. That represents 40,000 homes. So that newsletter went to every one of those homes. 6 articles on strategic planning in our weekly, monthly Education Matters newsletters. 18 videos have been produced regarding the topic of strategic planning. There was 1 from Strategic Planning 1.0 and several from Strategic Planning 2.0, including presentations from Plant Moran Real Point, as well as our Teaching, Learning, and Technology Department, as well as In the Loop with the Soup, which is a short little social media post that we create and put out there. We have had 8 social media posts since Strategic Plan 2.0 in August is when we started with those 8. And that included an overview of video and links to the videos I just mentioned. So in total, my videos, August 31st, they were posted 488 views, Plant Moran 132, Teaching, Learning, Technology 105. September 20th, my videos posted had 428 total views, Plant Moran 112, TLT videos 53. October 10th video, 302 videos of my videos reviewed, 139 of Plant Moran video and TLT 140. November 1st was a big one. My video had 463 views. Plant Moran video had 1.1 thousand videos. So that's the one where we discussed the scenarios. I'm not surprised, that we got a lot of interest in particular on that one. TLT video had 262. And then as of now, the last video that was posted regarding November 29th, 364 views of my video, 193 Plant Moran, and 56 of TLT. I think that's important to put out there because it isn't that we had a committee of 50 people come together and review the data and have discussions and deliberate and wrestle with the tough questions. It wasn't that you had your Board of Education mostly at every one of those strategic planning meetings, but we've also done a tremendous amount of communication on the topic, dating all the way back really to September 2022. And then when you think about something else that's sort of a little unorthodox, and I just think it needs to be lifted because we live it, we don't really understand that not every place operates this way. But our school district has had 102 opportunities since September of 22 to provide public comment or feedback specifically on strategic plan, as well as any other items. And so just to give you some context, from September 2022 to May 2023, we had 12 board meetings. With respect to committees, all of our committee meetings are open to the public, and anybody can make public comment at our committee meetings. And we do have community members that will take us up on that offer periodically. The executive committee over the 22-23 school year met 9 times, TLT met 14 times, Finance and Operations met 12 times, Communications met 9, Community Forum. Community forums are something that our board has implemented, and it provides an opportunity for anybody in the community that would like to come in and have a two-way conversation with any board member that is present. We had 4 of those meetings last year, and then we have also something that's not open to the public, but I want to lift it. It's called the District Parent Council. The District Parent Council is a representative body where 1 to 2 parent reps from each of our schools will attend and learn about the current happenings of the district, including things like strategic plan and strategic plan 2.0. It's a great opportunity for us to hear directly from the PTAs, their thoughts, feelings, perspectives regarding where decisions might be headed. This current school year, since we launched strategic plan 2.0, we've had 42 total opportunities for the community to engage to date. That includes 10 board meetings, 7 executive meetings, 8 TLT meetings, 9 finance and operations meetings, 6 marketing communications meetings, 2 community forums, and we've had DPC meet on 2 different occasions. I think what's also important to mention is these meetings are not all at the same time. Some are in the evening, some are in the afternoon, some are in the morning. They take place at various times of day, and in that way, really provides our community with maximum opportunity to attend any number of events based upon what fits their work schedule, their personal lives. And we do that because we feel like hearing that feedback is very important. And so just circling back, why is this so rushed? This process has not been rushed. It's been extraordinarily thoughtful. It's engaged dozens and dozens of stakeholders. It's provided a lot of opportunity for voice, for feedback, for deliberation. And frankly, we meet a lot. And we meet a lot publicly. Our meetings are oftentimes open to the public. So I just want to provide that quick overview. That question has been asked, it has been answered, and we are now including it in the frequently asked questions document. We are updating the FAQ regularly. It's on our website under the strategic plan, strategic plan page, which also includes all of my videos, as well as all the presentations from Plant Moran, as well as our teaching, learning, and technology department. So the information is widely available for anybody who is interested and would like to look at it more closely. So with that, my second item, actually, before I go on to my second item, Mr. President, are there any questions about that?
You want to have any questions, comments? I think the message is please, public, stay engaged, stay informed. All the information is out there. If you are behind in the information, it's all out there. You can go back to the very first meeting and follow the course of the comments and the process of the strategic plan 2.0. So stay involved, stay engaged. That would be my only comments.
Thank you, Mr. President. So my second item this evening, I'm pleased to actually turn this one over to Mr. Van Gotham to talk about our audit presentation. And I don't want to, give a sneak peek or anything like that, but I have to really give accolades to our business office. I got a sneak peek of the audit presentation, but everyone who's here in the audience and Jeffrey and his team, they're just phenomenal, the work that they do. Nanette and Heather, just really remarkable work. So with that, Mr. Van Gotham, you've done a great job, and I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of move us to the next segment.
Thank you, Dr. Salah. So we have this evening with us Mark Sawyers. He is a partner with Hungerford Knit Girls, who is our independent public accounting firm. Each year, the state of Michigan requires that all K-12 public schools get audited. And so we have essentially someone come in and double check that all the work that we're doing, the resources that the state of Michigan, the federal government, and local sources provides for us are accurately handled, and we're spending those in the proper manner with which we're receiving those dollars. So again, I want to echo sentiments. We do have in my opinion, an all-pro business office, and it starts with Heather and Nanette. So Heather Kerrigan is our director of finance, and Nanette Ryan is our accounting supervisor. Those two really set the framework for a really solid office team, and a lot of this positive results that you'll hear from Mark are really as a testament to the work that they do in their department. So I can't thank them, as well as my assistant, Ms. Gina Moruskin, enough for all the work they put into not only this audit, but all the day-to-day stuff, because the business office is kind of behind the scenes, but it certainly helps when we're spending well over $100 million a year, that we have the right team in there doing that for us. So I can't thank them enough. And with that being said, thank you, Mr. Sawyers, for being here. Mark has been on the engagement for the last 2 years now, and he is here to kind of give us an update on where we stood for the June 30th, 2023 fiscal year end. So thank you, Mark, for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
All right, let's try that again here. Good evening. Normally I would say some nice comments about the business office. That's typically what we do as well, but I think that's pretty well said. We really enjoy working with the district, very responsive. It's on my first slide here, so I'll flip to it, but always prepared. Like I said, very responsive, really strong business office, a lot of support behind the scenes with Heather and Nanette. So, this is our second year working with the district. Often there's a transition when you switch audit firms. It might take 2 or 3 years before you hit a stride with efficiencies on both sides and really learning to work with each other. We think we're in a really great spot. It was a successful year from a timing standpoint. Obviously, you need a timely submission to MDE. November 1st is that deadline. So very tight turnaround and a lot of work for a business office. We do essentially 2 audits. What's called a single audit. That's based on federal expenditures that the district has. A district of your size will always need a single audit. You have the Education Stabilization Fund. Those grant funds winding down, but I think have consumed business offices across the state the past few years, and probably lots of your board meetings focus on those different grant funds. As you all know, ongoing construction here at the district, that adds another layer to an audit, and business offices work with tracking expenditures on those bonds. There's a bonded construction fund audit that every recipient of these bonds needs in the state, or issuer of these bonds. So that is something we look at on an annual basis. We do testing from that standpoint, making sure that bonds are being spent in accordance with that ballot language and other Department of Treasury requirements. A couple statistics here on the slide, showing what we're dealing with. You have $22.5 million in construction in progress, meaning really large ongoing projects here at Milford High School, Lakeland High School. You had some completed projects this year with the elementary schools. And we also reflect the debt retired in the district. So you did issue a bond this year, but continue to pay down a lot of bond principal. So you can see close to $20 million in the current year, close to $80 million in the last 3 years. If you have the report in front of you, I'd steer you to the front of it, the opinion letter. Most important couple pages of the report. And what you want there is an unmodified opinion. You want us taking template language for that report and copying it into your audited financials, meaning we had no modifications to it, no issues. So as it says there, that is the highest level of assurance that you can receive in an audit, is an unmodified opinion. We also look at internal controls over financial reporting. We look at compliance with laws and regulations. No findings in either area with those compliance aspects of the audit. I mentioned the bond and construction fund requirements. That is something we look at on an annual basis. And then at the end of those projects, when they're substantially complete, we'll issue a separate report that reflects the activity on the bond. So I mentioned all of the challenges to the business office. There's two others this year with GASB pronouncements. Been pretty active the last few years with new pronouncements. So one of those, probably the more critical of the two, related to software-based IT arrangements, agreements, which you could imagine at a school district. There's lots of IT software-related agreements. So that's something we looked at. Materiality is considered. So the effect of implementing this standard was minimal, as there's not a long-term debt that's been added to the district's financials. This slide here does a good job giving context to what governmental financial statements are all about. You really have two sets of financial statements. You have your district-wide and you have your governmental fund financials. GASB 34 from some years back implemented this requirement that you would reflect both sets of financials. So the district-wide, really the key difference, it includes long-term natured assets and liabilities. So things like your net pension liability, for example. We talk about that on this slide here. And important to note, what we're doing in an audit with that liability balance, we're taking published tables from the Office of Retirement Services, which is audited separately. That is a statewide liability, and we're reporting the share here at Huron Valley. A lot of actuarial involvement. There's some good reading in the report if you want to learn more about that. A couple different notes to the financials hit on your net pension and OPEB liabilities and all of the estimates that go into those. There was a large fluctuation this year, primarily due to market conditions. Really, over time is going to fluctuate a lot, driven by those market conditions more than anything else. From a financial analysis standpoint, governmental fund financial statements, this is where you have your general fund broken out from special revenue funds and all the debt funds of the district. Really gives an opportunity for that ongoing analysis. That's what we're going to focus on with some of the next slides. So it's worth mentioning, I was here last week, had a good discussion with the board, went into detail, really stopped on a lot of these slides and talked. For this presentation purpose, I'm going to show you them, point out a couple of the fluctuations, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions, really at this point or any point in the presentation. So these are the fund financials. So you have your general fund, obviously a major fund of the district. That's your primary operating fund. Then you have your special revenue funds all consolidated. They're listed out what's included in that column. You have your debt service, combining all of your debt service funds, and then your capital projects, which include the Building and Site Sinking Fund, and also a Capital Improvement Fund. Also in the fund financial statements is the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Essentially an income statement. As you can see, the growth over the last couple of years, I think worth noting the change in revenue and expenditures from last year to this year, pretty stable and consistent with each other. The net change in fund balance in your general fund is up $600,000. So a positive increase in your general fund balance. It's a little difficult to see probably from all of your seats here, but this is the general fund budget to actual statement. So we're required to present your budget and how you performed, in your general fund, and also in the back of the report are special revenue funds that are also you're required to complete a budget for. So here we're focused on, not overexpending your budget, which as you can see, about 2/3 of the way down the page there, total expenditures were not overexpended, and total revenues were not under projected, so both positives. You see in the blue there, we look at the health of the general fund, really based on MDE guidance, and that you would want to see between 10 and 20% of the subsequent year expenditures, that ending fund balance, also measured based on current year unrestricted revenue, so two measurements there. Both right in the middle of the range of 10 to 20%, so I think really healthy fund balances, really at a good level there. The next few slides just show a breakout here of revenue and expenditures. This slide here shows state sources, your primary source of revenues, your restricted and unrestricted state aid mainly. Then you have your federal grants making up the yellow portion there, and local sources such as property tax making up the green. Really not a lot to comment here. This is total revenue, but you can see kind of stable increases over the last 5 years. Here's a similar pie chart for expenditures. So this is showing the breakdown by functions. You have instruction, supporting services, community services, and food service, all here in this pie chart. Obviously, the majority of your instruction and supporting services listed out below the table. That kind of shows you what all is included in there. So the green being the instruction, easy to know what's in there, your teachers. Then you have supporting services, which also include a lot of education related salaries, and some of those are listed out in the different descriptions below. Again, expenditures, pretty stable increase over the last 5 years. This is a good slide showing all the fund balances. We talked about the general fund increasing 600,000 from, I want to say, roughly 11 or 12% to that 13% that you see this year in the fund balance percentage. All of the other funds with net increases going in the right direction from that standpoint. A little more information on this slide. This shows the breakout of fund balance. So you have what could be restricted fund balance. You have committed, which requires a formal board resolution. You have assigned, which was really more board management discretion for fund balance. And then the majority, being the green, is your unrestricted. And that's what you want to see in a general fund, that the vast majority there is unrestricted fund balance. This is the transition slide to the single audit. If there's any questions, feel free to stop me, but that's the financial statement portion of the presentation. So I mentioned the compliance audit. If you have $750,000 in federal grants, you need this compliance audit, the single audit. It's a risk-based audit, so we don't audit every program you have. It's directly connected to the financial audit. So things like internal controls have that direct connection, internal controls over financial reporting, because we are presenting figures in this report that tie directly to federal grant revenue that's reflected in the financial statements. So all that to say, we have, again, unmodified opinion here. The report letters in the single audit are what you want to see. Unmodified reports for both of those. One of the two relates to the compliance testing performed. And this year we looked at two different programs. I'll show you here on a slide in a moment. We had one finding, significant deficiency finding. That's the lesser of the two levels of findings that we can give, and that related to meal counting. Won't hit too much on that, other than to say some human error involved in checklists that are used in the program during the pandemic. That was a more prevalent issue across the state. So that was a meal counting, rather small meal counting difference, but it did lead to a finding here in the audit due to the control considerations in the audit. Also worth noting, corrective action has already been implemented. So changes have already been made to address those counting errors that we found in the audit. No material noncompliance, and you are still a low-risk auditee. So that is, with a significant deficiency finding, there is no impact on that low-risk auditee status. It's a little difficult to see here, but this is really a recap of everything that I just talked about, but with showing the differences between last year and this year. So you went from 16 million to 8 million in total federal expenditures, almost entirely driven or completely driven by the education stabilization funds, your ESSER 2, your ESSER 3, your 11T equalization. All of those different grants impacted that large decrease you see this year. Type A programs, those are the large programs in the districts. Those have remained consistent. The major programs audited, those are the two that we're actually opining on in the compliance report here. Those are the two programs that we tested, the Child Nutrition Cluster and the Education Stabilization Fund, which is an umbrella term for any and all ESSER related grants. You can see there we're looking at a large percentage of your total grants. That's, again, driven by Education Stabilization Fund. So 67% last year, 51% this year. So we're getting some really good coverage in the testing that we perform. I mentioned the one finding that was noted, and also that you're still a low-risk auditee. We had this slide in last year showing, what was spent as of our audit date and what was remaining to spend. Carried that forward here just to show you that you're nearing the end. I don't know where you stand currently, here in early December, but as of June 30, just over $1 million was left in the 11T funding. So we'll look to kind of wrap up our testing of this program, likely in the fiscal year 24 audit. Finally, beyond the single audit, we have a letter that goes to the board. It's a required communication. I won't read you each bullet on this next couple of slides, but what it is our chance to communicate any issues that we might have had with management, Any significant matters related to the audit that we would need to communicate would be included in the letter. Large material journal entries that we may have needed to recommend in the audit would be communicated. Again, as you know, like my comments earlier, we did not have any issues with the business office and performing our audit in general. So not a whole lot to report there. There are a couple changes to the letter, the standard letter that we would give. One related to excess fund balance in the food service fund. This is something the state's requested that all firms are putting this language in the letter for their tracking purposes to know the food service funds out there that still have an excess fund balance. The story behind that, you know, really large percentage of schools in the state have excess fund balance due to increased meal rates, reimbursement rates during the last few years, really, that have increased those fund balances. Just a few things to think about going forward as I wrap up here and can take questions. Final expenditure reports for these grants. So from our perspective, they're winding down, but it's probably still some work to do with the reporting side of things. You know, monitoring that spend down plan to get your excess fund balance and food service back below the allowable levels. Talked about the bond audit and the bond project tracking. That's really important. It's almost a full-time job, I think, keeping track of the accounting, the different assets that your projects are producing, really, and the construction and progress balances as you go along is a lot of work. So that's something to keep an eye on. And then finally, I talked about the 2 GASBs this year, but next year there are no GASB implementations. So a little break for the business office and auditors as well. We'll look forward to no GASB implementations in fiscal year 24. And that is all I have for you. Any questions I can take?
Any questions in front of the board? Mark and finance staff presented this to our finance and operations group, and we had an opportunity to ask quite a few questions during that time. Do I see any other questions, any comments? Seeing none, I do have our treasurer, Amy Grzynkowski, was not able to make it tonight. But in knowing that she was going to be absent, she asked me to convey to you some information. First of all, reading from the email she sent to me, first she would like to apologize for not presenting her comments in person. It's the fact that it is very rare for Amy to miss a meeting, but she's away on business and unable to attend. But she is out there watching us live stream as we speak, so I better get this right. As a board member of Huron Valley Schools, it is our responsibility to oversee the financial spending and policies of the district. As treasurer, Amy writes, I feel this weight keenly. As we reviewed the annual audit report in our finance and operations meeting this past week, I was reminded anew of the gravity of managing over $100 million of federal, state, county, and local funds, all taxpayer funds. I might add, the single audit process for federal dollars and financial audit for remaining funds is a deep dive into not only how our financials are distributed and managed, but into the process and policies that govern our accounting. This is no small task for the auditor or finance team. It gives me great confidence and pride to see the results of our annual audit. The finance audit, led by Mr. Van Gothen, along with Gina, Heather, and Nanette, is truly top-notch. Their careful consideration and dedication to highly effective accounting practices and policies resulted in a straightforward audit in the continued distinction of a low-risk auditee. I would like to congratulate the Finance Office on a continued distinction of a low-risk auditee. I would like to congratulate them on a job well done. This is another demonstration of the hard work and due diligence that is part of Huron Valley. Once again, a job well done. And this was provided to me to read by our treasurer, Amy Grzynkowski. I'd like to also say a job well done to all of you. We very much appreciate and respect the work that you've done. You have done. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process that goes over, I'd say not 12 months, but 14, 15 months, because here we are closing out 22-23 and we're in December of 23-24. This information is not only on our website, but it is also provided to the state of Michigan in a timely fashion as required. The only comment that I have, maybe Mark or Jeffrey, I'd like to point out since we are talking about the strategic plan 2.0, we're talking about the possibility of going out for bonds. On your, I think the second slide, I think it's important to note where it talks about 2023 building and site bond issue. Recently, we issued $70 million worth of bonds. We received a $9 million premium because our bonds are very well thought of. But at the same time, I think it's important to note that we retired almost $20 million worth of bonds or debt this past school year. That's like if you owned a home, you paid off $20 million of your home and really frees up some additional dollars because now you've built up equity into your home. At the same time, over the last 3 years, our district has paid off almost $80 million worth of bonds, which is extraordinary. And I congratulate all of you for doing that. And I also really want to point this out from a taxpayer standpoint, that we are solid, not only on a general fund standpoint, on dollars that are spent every year for our students, because that's what these dollars represent. The budget and our finances are a living, breathing document because these dollars are going back directly into the classroom to pay our help, which is 85% of what our costs are, and to provide services to our students. But at the same time, we've paid off $80 million worth of bonds, and in our agenda coming up, we're going to be talking about the possibility of going out for some additional bonds. And by paying off this debt, we are now in a position to ask our taxpayers for additional dollars to help provide services to our students, to bring us into a competitive market, which is public education, to provide services to our students, and to provide the wherewithal for our community to see their investments, their homes, their community to grow. And more importantly, we're paying off this debt, and because of that, we're able to go out for a no tax rate increase to further enhance the offerings for our school district. So I just don't want to gloss that over. We talk a lot about the general fund, but the bond issue and the fact that we're doing all this work within the debt allows us to do these other types of things, at the same time being extraordinarily good watchdogs of our in providing our fiduciary responsibilities to our community. At the same time, I think there's a level of assurance from Mark and his staff that our dollars are being spent not only in the general fund but in the special revenue. But the bond issue that was passed in 2019, that is also being audited. And there's strict guidelines as it relates to how those dollars can be spent. And it's important that we don't wait until the end of those dollars being spent, but those things are being audited and looked at on an ongoing basis. So the things that we said were going to be done in the manner in which they're going to be done within the bond application that was approved by the state of Michigan in 2019 are actually being done according to generally accepted accounting principles. So it's not a question, but I think it's important for people to note that. And I too appreciate the work that you, Mark, have done along with your staff and of course our staff to get us into that position so that our community is assured that each and every dollar that they give to us to educate their children and provide the facilities that we have are done according to what we say they're going to be and have passed the test that's required of us by the state of Michigan and federal government. So a job well done to all of you, and I appreciate the time that you've given to us to explain this. This information, Jeffrey, will be out on our website.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Wiseman.
And if you have any questions, community, please, once again, stay involved, stay informed. Jeffrey and his staff are available to answer any questions that you might have. So once again, thank you. With that, Chairperson Pastana, I don't believe we have any student leadership at this time.
Not tonight.
Okay. Association communication, Jennifer.
Good evening. I'd like to start my comments this evening by expressing my sincere condolences on behalf of the HVEA to the family and friends of Joseph, and to the Lakeland, White Lake, and Oxbow staff. The loss of a student is incredibly heartbreaking and impacts all of us. Secondly, I'd like to share my thanks to Danielle Larsch for her leadership and her commitment to our ASD categorical program at Lakewood. Danielle has been instrumental in supporting our students and our 2 new ASD teachers. I too appreciate all the work that she does to continue to grow our Lakewood program. Danielle is a shining example of the commitment of our Huron Valley educators. And finally, as we all know, there's been a lot of discussion over the past many months about our Strategic Plan 2.0 committee and the important decision to right-size our district. I have been part of this committee, and I have heard firsthand all of the presentations and the discussions. Anytime we talk about building closures, repurposing buildings, and moving school boundaries, it brings up complicated thoughts and feelings. We often understand rationally why a decision needs to be made, but sometimes our hearts are pulled in a different direction. None of these decisions are clear-cut and easy to make. I appreciate that Dr. Salah and our Board of Education have engaged in discussions with our educators to help them understand the why behind their decisions and to answer their questions. Please continue to be open to these dialogues. There are many educators and HVS staff members being impacted by these decisions, and many of us will have similar questions and concerns. You may have had the same conversation yesterday or already answered that same email, but your willingness to hear our individual questions and worries is important to continue to build trust and knowing that you are aware of each and every one of our concerns. Our schools are our families. We spend more time in our buildings than we do at home. We love being educators and teaching our students. However, our colleagues are the ones that support with us, laugh with us, and get us through the day. So when we close a building, no matter the reason, and no matter if it's the right decision for the district, our educators and staff will have strong emotions and will grieve at the loss of what they have now. Acknowledging and honoring these feelings is important. We need to recognize that it is normal to experience anxiety when there are so many unknowns about where we will teach and what we will teach, and to continue to give educators a place to share these concerns as we walk through all the details. Change, as we know, is often hard. Even for those who see change as a new opportunity, strong feelings will be present and support will be needed. Our shared goal is for all our educators who are currently working in our schools to continue to want to work in Huron Valley and to return each year to us. The key to that happening is to continue to work together to ensure that our educators have their questions answered and their voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Next, we have on the agenda is board correspondence. Secretary Pastana, do we have any board correspondence?
Nope, nothing this evening, Mr. President.
All right, treasurer's report. I have already given the treasurer's report from Amy. Next, reports from board committee. Executive committee. The executive committee has not met since the last time we had a Board of Education meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for Friday, December 15th at 2:30. Next, TLT committee.
TLT has not met since the last board meeting. We will be meeting tomorrow, the 5th at 4:30.
Finance and Operations Committee, Michelle.
The Finance and Operations Committee met Wednesday, November 29th at 8:12 a.m. in the Administration Building. Present were Tom Wiseman, Amy Grisomkowski, Paul Salah, Jeffrey Van Gotham, John Reedy, Heather Carnigan, Nanette Ryan, Gina Maruskin, Mark Sawyers, from Hungerford Nichols. There was no public comment. We reviewed the meeting minutes from the previous meeting on November 15th, which included board notes from December 1st of 2023. Consent agenda items, the 22-23 audited financial statements were reviewed. Mark Sawyers from Hungerford Nichols shared the results of the 22-23 audited financial statements. We received an unmodified opinion, which is an A for an audit report card, and are considered a low-risk auditee, which we heard from Mark this evening. There was no unfinished business, no new business, no safety and security updates. One other item on the agenda was Oxbow RRFB signal. The committee discussed the plan to go out to bid, bring the bid results to the Finance and Operation Committee in mid-January, and seek approval from the board in February. The meeting adjourned at 9:09 a.m. Our next meeting is December 13th at 9 a.m.
Thank you very much. Communications, marketing, and legislative.
We have not met since our last meeting. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, December 12th at 2:30.
Great. Thank you very much. Next is public comments. I do have one public comment from the citizens participation form. If there is any other public comments, make certain you fill one of these forms out. Pass them on to Ms. Cadell. Kim. You state your name, address, and school district.
Thanks. I hope I'm in the right spot. I wasn't sure when I filled it out. Anyways, my name is Kim Gutierrez. I live at 1020 East Commerce in the village of Milford, and I am here to give a good comment. So I have a 9th grader at Milford High School. She also went to Muir, and I am here to give some kudos to the theater department of Muir and Milford. My daughter was in the last 2 plays at Muir and was recently just in the 9 to 5 musical at Milford. And I was blown away. My husband and I attend a lot of theater. We go to, theater around here. We go to Broadway. We go to all kinds of stuff. And sitting in the audience of our auditoriums, the Little Theater and the CPA, it did not feel like these were high school or even middle school. When our daughter did the first middle school one, I literally walked out of there thinking this was like a high school production for a middle schooler. And then, of course, to attend Milford this year, which I have attended in the past, not with a kid in there, was just incredible. And so that being said, that part's great, but I also want to talk about like the behind the scenes. I was able to actually volunteer the last 2 years with Meg Gallagher in Muir and then with Meg Weeks and her team. And the amount of hours that those ladies go outside of the school day and put into those productions is insane, amazing, and probably the most beautiful thing that I have ever seen. I'm an educator over here grading millions of papers, and I know the amount of work that happens outside, and for them to take that on above their day needs to be applauded and given every bit of recognition, because they not only are they just working to organize, but they are planning, they are finding people to help them, they are doing costumes, they are doing promotions, billing. I mean, just the amount that they have to do, not only to organize the production and make it happen, but then to put on that production. And the schedule is the most insane thing I've ever seen. It took an hour for me to get my daughter's schedule on my calendar. And that's just me. So I can only imagine what Meg Weeks goes through. So I just wanted to, I tend to send a big email to all the board and to Dr. Salah, but I was going to be here tonight, so I thought, you know what, I'll just say it out loud so everyone could hear. If your kid's not in theater, encourage them. If you like theater, or if you don't like theater, go and watch these productions because they're incredible. And as we move forward with all this strategic planning and we sit and do the funding and the budgeting, let's make sure that our theater department is up there at the top as something that is an opportunity that we offer, because we really have a gem. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kim. Next, we have consent agenda, which is the approval of the minutes and also the approval of the 22-23 audited financial statements that were just presented. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented with items A and B. Thank you.
Do I have a second? A motion made by Member Cotter and seconded by Member Dodd. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, could I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Dodd,
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Dimick,
Yes.
and Mr. Wiseman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
We do not have any unfinished business before us tonight. New business, Dr. Salah, Strategic Plan 2.0 recommendation, Exhibit B.
Thank you, Mr. President. So as part of the initial strategic plan, which took place over the months of September 22 to December 2022, one of the recommendations of that initial committee was to engage a third party to assist us with a enrollment study, a building utilization study, and a facilities assessment. We went out for response for proposal in order to determine who might be interested in doing that work and provided a very detailed description of the type of work that we needed to accomplish. There were three companies that submitted in that response, and Plant Moran Real Point, who is here this evening, was the successful entity that the district decided to engage with based upon that recommendation from the strategic plan committee. I just want to share, we're going to invite Paul Terrio from Plant Moran to the podium here in just a moment. Interesting, going into this process this year, I sort of had in my mind where I thought we were heading based upon what I thought I knew about enrollment projections and what we had heard from other entities that we've had do that work in the past. Middle Cities is an entity out there that does enrollment projections. Stanford is another entity that does enrollment projections. We've used both of them in the past because of our bond work. You're required to get projections as it relates to how you intend to use your buildings, and that has to be based upon enrollment. The numbers that we had heard from them was like in 5 years, we would be 7,300 students. The numbers that we heard from Plant Moran totally changed my thinking, at least, going into this, once this process had started. I frankly, for our listening audience, I really thought we were going to be talking about much, much greater consolidation and far more buildings closures than where we are actually landing with this recommendation. And so I applaud the strategic plan committee for making that recommendation to use a third party. It's important to engage professionals in this kind of work, and I think that has been extraordinarily helpful. And so I guess the final thought I would share before we turn it over to hear the actual recommendation from Plant Moran, because we saw and were concerned about enrollment trends, especially at the secondary level, we moved our bond work from elementary to high school and put sort of a thumbtack in our middle schools. But once the recommendation is presented and eventually, the board arrives at a conclusion where we're heading, that's going to allow us to do some master planning at the middle school level and really talk about exactly what that work is going to look like at middle school. So I'm very excited about that as we move forward. So with that, I'd like to invite Paul Terrio from Plant Moran Real Point to the microphone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm Paul Terrio with Plant Moran Real Point. I'm also a parent in the district. I have a couple of sons over at Milford High and a recent graduate up at MSU from Milford. So, and we've lived in the community for about 20 years now, so it was an honor to be engaged by the district for this study. We were really charged with a few different things. Some to help with the strategic planning. We are engaged to do enrollment projections, building utilization, as well as helping put a 10-year capital plan together, and then facilitating the strategic planning 2.0 committee. You can see kind of the schedule of some of the dates that we met, starting way back in June. And then we had 5 other meetings, August, September, October, November, with some of the topics over on the right, which we're going to walk through for you this evening. Just a little bit about Plant Moran Real Point. Most people hear Plant Moran, they think of accounting and tax, but we do have quite a few different consulting groups as well. Plan Moran Real Point does a lot of development consulting, a lot of capital planning, and owners representation services. Currently, we're managing about $5 billion worth of programs, anything from the District Detroit and the Henry Ford project downtown to a lot of K-12 and municipal projects, from cities, villages, and townships, acute care, senior living, things of that nature. So pretty broad view across the country, but a lot of it is right here in southeastern Michigan. With that, we have a pretty big public sector practice that really is our bread and butter, so to say. We work with 33 of the top 50 school districts, and I think 20 of the top 25. A lot of them, it's consulting, things like enrollment projections and putting capital plans together. And for a lot of them, we help provide owners representation services on their capital programs. Probably don't need to go through this slide too much, but as I mentioned, for this assignment, we really focused on enrollment projections, utilization, and then putting that 10-year capital plan together with a facility assessment. One slide that usually gets everybody's attention pretty quick is the birth rate slide, and this is for all of Oakland County. So you can see back in 1990, there were about 17,000 live births. And if you looked in 2022, there's about 13,000. That's about a 25% drop over that period of time that affects not just Huron Valley schools, but all the school districts in Oakland County. If you go back just to the senior class that's about to graduate to today, there's about an 11% drop. So those students that were not born, that don't go to public school, has a real impact on a lot of the communities in southeastern Michigan. And if you looked at Macomb County and Wayne County, you would see similar numbers. This slide, I think, tells a lot too. If you look back to 2016, there were about 9,200 students in the district, and about 8,300 of those lived in the district, and the other approximately 1,000 or 900 were from outside the district. If you fast forward to 2023, that number is about 8,052. So that's a pretty significant drop of about 1,200 students over that period of time. Doing enrollment projections too, stable is a lot easier to predict than unstable. And the last 3 years have been anything but stable with COVID, with a lot of those numbers crashing pretty low and some of them coming back, some students going virtual. So it's been a common theme throughout Southeast Michigan, really across the country. How do I project what my student count's going to look like in the fall or in the winter when it's been so unstable the last few years? So we spent a lot of time looking at those numbers and trying to slice and dice them a lot of different ways, looking at them through different grade configurations, looking at them residents of the district versus students that come into the district from outside the boundaries. We also looked at some of the major construction and development projects that are in the works. Some of them obviously are full tilt ahead as you drive around town, but we found by interviewing the 5 municipalities and talking to their zoning, planning, economic development departments, we found almost 3,000 units that are imminent, we would say, in the next 5 to 7 years, which sounds like a lot. And it is, but the average number of students per household or per unit is only 0.417, which at first glance seems way too low. But if you think about the birth rate chart we looked at, people just don't have as many kids as they used to. There's also a lot of those units probably have people that are older, senior citizens, things like that, or people with younger children that aren't in K-12 yet. But if you looked at those almost 3,000 new units times 0.47, that equals about 1,100 students. But some of these developments are age restricted, like Kensington Ridge down on Milford Road in 96. Some of these developments are outside the district's boundaries, but close, so we counted those as well. And if you factor all that in, it really equates to about 280 students. So as we went through this exercise, we thought, wow, there could be a significant number of kids coming into the district, but really it's more like about 30 a year over the next 10 years. So that was enrollment projections. For utilization, we worked a lot with administration and the building principals to understand how many classrooms they had in their buildings, how many were used for general ed, special ed, how many were used for some of the special classes, how many were vacant. We walked through the schools as well, just to kind of see things with our own eyes, just to make sure that what we were hearing is what we saw, and it was. The next slide kind of shows a sample floor plan. So we went through and color coded all the rooms. Green was general ed. So in this case for Country Oaks, you've got kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, a couple of junior kindergarten classrooms. You've also got some dedicated classrooms for things like art, music, and tech. And then there's some support spaces. Those support spaces are rooms that probably were classrooms 20 years ago, but now they're being used for other purposes. And then at Country Oaks, there was one open classroom that was not being utilized. So what does all that mean? I don't know, this is probably a little bit of an eye chart for this audience, but we really tried to look at, again, building by building, room type of room, or room type by room type. And you can see in the green column, there's about 370 general ed classrooms throughout the district. And what we looked at in total was there's the potential to have up to 509 classrooms, if you will. And again, no district wants to be at 100% utilization. That's not a good thing. Really, the target utilization for a school district is about 85%. That gives you enough flexibility to be able to adjust if you get more kids in the fall, or if you have different programs you want to offer. So we're not looking to be at 100% by any means, but with an enrollment of around 8,000, you can see the district overall was at a utilization of about 67%. And if you break that down at the elementary schools, it was about 84, which is right about where you would want to be. But at the middle school and high school, it was significantly lower, about 58% at the middle school and 59% at the high school, and 61 at the other buildings. So that definitely got our attention, and we dove deeper into those buildings, trying to understand exactly what was going on. Another thing to keep in mind, and obviously with your current bond, you're well aware of this, but the construction market, just like the enrollment numbers have been in flux the last few years with COVID and everything going on, and everyone's well aware of what's been going on with inflation in our own pocketbooks and at the supermarket, et cetera. But the construction industry has been hit particularly hard. Over the last 3 years, we would say that costs have gone up somewhere between 40 to 60%. And that doesn't even begin to talk about lead times for things like mechanical equipment and electrical equipment. So trying to budget for projects that may happen 2 years in the future, 3, 4, 5 years in the future has been a challenge. Historically, construction escalation was pretty steady at about 3% a year for the last 40 years. So this has really thrown the whole industry for a loop. And I think it's a big part of what had you guys reach out to us in the first place, is to try to understand how are you going to deal with your current bond funds and how to maximize those funds. And then, how do you find additional funding for future projects? The capital planning process was extremely thorough. So we worked with your operation and maintenance department. We walked every building, walked tunnels, sites, parking lots, roofs, building exteriors, and really tried to build a comprehensive plan for the next 10 years. Everything has a useful life. It's hard to look too much further than 10 years. So we really tried to focus our gaze on that period of time. We also met with some of your trades folks. Again, operations and maintenance is a key part of this, understanding which buildings, heating systems and cooling systems are working well, which buildings have enough electrical capacity, which ones don't, things of that nature. And from that, building by building, system by system, we built a 10-year capital plan and then prioritized it by need. So we've just really put things into 3 different buckets. So years 1 to 3, 4 to 6, and 7 to 10, building by building. And then we escalated that out into the future. Obviously, we're knock on wood, costs have seemed to come back down and not down, but the escalation has stabilized. We're down at probably 4 to 5% annual escalation with the hope that it'll get down to 3 or 4, but we did escalate these numbers out, I believe at 4% going forward. But you can see the end result of that is about $436 million in need. That also includes some information technology costs that we had help from Barton Malotech on. And then we put some costs to things like furniture and instructional materials and equipment and buses and things of that nature. So from that, we came up with a few different recommendations. One, obviously the district has invested a lot of money over at the Apollo Early Childhood Center. We thought that that made a lot of sense given the enrollment numbers at that building, and that any kind of future satellite program would probably be not part of this bond, but part of something in the future. We did not believe that reorganizing grade configurations made any sense. If we started moving 5th graders and 6th graders, 7th graders around, really we'd just be solving one problem and creating another. So we felt like the grade configuration should remain as is. We did feel like the elementaries were well utilized, so 8 elementary schools made sense. But 3 middle schools did not. So we were recommending potentially to the committee to look at only having 2 middle schools in the future. And then just given the geographic size of the district, we thought it made sense to continue to have 2 high school programs. Some of the ancillary programs like Harbor High and Adult Ed and Rec, we thought probably could move out of the Brooks Center and move into a different location. So that was something that we dove into deeper as well. So in general, kind of the consensus coming out of that study was reduce square footage, reduce your footprint, and try to reduce your operation and maintenance costs. And then look at some scenarios of how that could be accomplished. Try to put a range of costs to some of the innovative programs that we're hoping to fund, which was a big part of that committee. Is John and his team had a presentation at each meeting that got really in depth on different innovative programs that the district had been considering. Trying to put a cost to some of those was easier than others, but we definitely wanted to make sure we looked at that. And then ultimately looking at boundary lines and balancing enrollment across the district. So again, just some of the key takeaways. Probably skip through this slide mostly, but again, the elementaries were pretty well utilized. Middle schools were not and needed to be looked at deeper. And then the high schools, with 2 high schools that are underutilized, the thought there was more, what other programs could we move into those buildings that could utilize some of that square footage to help better use the space that you already have and reduce space in other buildings. So again, we kind of distilled that down over the different meetings we had. We kind of dove deep into some of these topics, and then some of them kept coming back up to the surface. So again, I won't read through all of these, but I'd probably hit the last 3, which really is the why. And if we go back to the strategic plan, which we tried to do is always keep the strategic plan in mind, really trying to make Huron Valley Schools a destination district for students and families and staff, and to set up the district for success, not just in the next 3 or 5 or 10 years, but 20, 30 years, 50 years beyond. So, and then making sure that we had financing in place to help with all of that. This slide gives, I think, a good overview of kind of where this process started back in 2018 when Bart Mallow came in and did a pretty detailed facility assessment. They found about $400 million in needs. In 2019, obviously, you passed a $182 million bond that's still ongoing in 2 series. We're coming in now with prices having gone up 40 to 60%, saying there's still about $436 million in need in those different prioritization buckets. And then obviously a future bond issuance or ballot proposal. And then looking at that, we looked at a few different things with your financial advisor and with the accounting department, finance department. A 10-year bond would potentially generate about $165 million, a 20-year term bond, $360 million. So that was something that we spent a lot of time talking about as well. Just to hit quick on maintenance and operation costs. So that's something that maybe is overlooked a lot. But when you have millions of square feet of space and you have things like gas bills, electric bills, water and sewer, property insurance, liability insurance, snow plowing, cutting the grass, all the different systems that need to be maintained, heating and cooling, et cetera, those add up. And the rule of thumb is about $7 to $10 a square foot. We actually had Mr. Van Gotham dig into those a little bit, and that's just about what we found out here was right in that $7 to $10 a square foot range. Obviously, older buildings have higher maintenance and operations costs. Newer ones probably have less, but we thought that was a good number when we started to run different scenarios. So what we essentially did is we came up with 4 different scenarios, A, B, C, and D, to entertain, and broke up into 6 different groups with the committee. And we had them look at all 4 of those different scenarios and try to prioritize which ones they thought made the most sense to the least sense. And we did a SWOT analysis to try to look at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. As we did that, the overwhelming majority of those groups, 5 of the 6, came up with scenario C as their recommendation, and then 1 had scenario A. So we kind of ended that meeting, went back and did some deeper dives and a deeper analysis on a few different fronts. 1 was to compile the SWOT analysis, and then 2, we started looking at the numbers again, trying to see were there things we overlooked, were there different costs or different angles of looking at things. We also reached back to the construction management and the architecture firm that you're currently working with, TMP and Clark, and picked their brains a little bit on phasing and constructability and things like that. And from the SWOT analysis, we came up with kind of a series of advantages and then some disadvantages. This slide shows the perceived advantages of scenario A and C. I won't read through all of them, but obviously having scenario C was to build a new middle school, just to be clear, at the Milford campus. And scenario A was to renovate Muir. Both scenarios had Oak Valley closing as a middle school, but other programs consolidating into that space to make better use of that building. They also had the administration building closing and moving over to Milford High School. So again, how can we reduce the square footage, reduce the district's footprint, save operational dollars to put those dollars back into the classroom? But having a new middle school over at the Milford campus was looked at as a good way to bring equity to the district with the campus over at Lakeland, having another campus over on the west side to protect the district's boundaries, to help bring equity to those different programs, to be able to share staff at the middle school and high school level and share facilities. So if we think of things like the PAC that we heard about a little while ago, the competition pools, the field houses, the athletic facilities, potentially STEM labs and science labs and things like that. There's a lot of possibilities there, we felt like. And then another big one was the transportation. So right now the district has 3-tier busing. Being able to drop down potentially to 2-tier busing was a pretty big transportation cost savings, which is something that I hadn't originally considered, but the accounting office was all over that one. They're the ones that pay those bills. So that's something I'll talk about in a couple more slides. And then just the whole safety aspect of having a school resource officer on those campuses was looked at as a pretty big positive as well. Disadvantages, there was a few. Really, a lot of it was around what happens to the Muir site. How does it get redeveloped eventually once the new school is open and Muir were to close? And then just time span of when would this happen? How long would it take to implement, et cetera? This is that's the disadvantages if I forget to hit the button there. So again, it was really centered around what happens at the Muir site. Transportation analysis. So this is where the finance office took a little bit deeper dive to look at what are the transportation costs on an annual basis, which are about $6.1 million. Someone said it well of there's a bus that drives by every house in the district 6 times a day with 3-tier busing. If it's 2-tier busing, that bus is only driving by 4 times a day. So less miles, less gas, less maintenance, less wear and tear. The finance office pegged that savings at somewhere between 20 to 25% of that budget, which would be over a 10-year period of time, somewhere between $13 and $18 million of savings. We also looked at innovative programming and which scenario would be easier to implement some of these concepts. You can see here, I won't read through them all, but you can see scenario A and C and kind of how those vetted out. Again, I won't get into all of them, but you can see scenario C, most of those were a little bit easier to implement with the campus concept. And then we talked a lot about timelines. So obviously it's up to the board to decide when and if to put something on the ballot. But it does take time to move people around, it takes time to redraw lines, it takes time to plan and design from an architecture standpoint and an engineering standpoint, and then to actually construct a new school. As well, it takes time to abate and demolish existing buildings. So we tried to lay out some dates here. These are preliminary, obviously, but we wanted to just give some context to it for the committee. And then we tried to analyze them on a dollars basis. So scenario C was a savings overall of about $5.4 million over 10 years when we initially looked at it. And scenario A was about a $30 million savings. We looked at general fund dollars, sinking fund dollars, the current bond, and then a future bond. Things from abatement and demolition costs, logistical costs, design fees, construction costs, operations and maintenance, even the sale of existing property and how that could be generated. And then we tried to make it as apples to apples as we could. So we looked at all the 4 different scenarios this way. At the end, we tried to make sure that the new middle school that we considered, if we were to stay in Muir in scenario A, getting that building to be a comparable size. And then the transportation costs going from 3-tier to 2-tier busing really was kind of the last variable there, where it really started to bring those savings closer together. And I think it's important to mention that both of these scenarios were a savings to the district. But if you start to look at a 10-year number, and then as you go further into the future, 11, 12, 13, 14 years, those numbers really start to go towards each other and probably invert a little bit, where scenario C over a 20-year period of time is probably more cost effective than scenario A. I think that was a big part of our final meeting when we kind of went through that with the committee, was to get our minds around that fact. Also, obviously, transportation dollars are general fund dollars, which can go right back into the classroom, as are the operation and maintenance dollars. So from all that, the committee put a recommendation together. Again, it started with the strategic plan, as we did often in those meetings. I won't read through all these, but obviously goal statement 1 is really focused on innovative programming throughout the district and maximizing instructional minutes in the learning environment. Goal statement 2 is really maximizing resources and infrastructure to help attract families and staff. And then, again, over the 5 months that we convened, we really took some deep dives, really tried to keep the strategic plan in mind, looked at birth rate trends, community demographics, enrollment, utilization, facility needs, transportation costs, and really that distilled down into 4 scenarios, which distilled down into 2, which ultimately the committee felt very comfortable and very happy with the process, I would say. It was a very thorough process where everyone had a chance to speak, everyone had a chance to voice their opinions, a lot of good diversity of thought in the room. But in the end, the recommendation really, and it's funny, the last 2 scenarios that we came down to were very similar if you looked at them on this last slide here. They both said retain existing grade configurations, become a 2 middle school district with an 8-2-2 feeder pattern, increase utilization and lower operating and maintenance costs by consolidating into fewer buildings, determine a date for a no millage ballot proposal, close Oak Valley Middle School and consolidate into the other 2 middle schools, renovate White Lake and bring that up to district standards. That was something that the committee felt very strongly about is that White Lake needed to be just as good as the other middle school, so that they were equitable. Close Brooks and consolidate Harbor HCP and Community Rec Ed into Oak Valley. Close the administration building and consolidate into Milford High School. And then scenario C really was to build a new middle school on the Milford High School campus. So I know that was a lot of information, and it was, again, a lot of long meetings, a lot of great, healthy discussion over the last 6 months. Very proud to be part of it and to have the opportunity to serve the district, and be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Yes, Ms. Pisana.
No question, just a comment. I really appreciate, Paul, you and your team from Plant Moran. You guys spent a lot of time digging into a lot of different questions I know each board member had, so I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the committee. Everybody was there, they showed up every time, and there was lots of good discussion. I appreciate that. Becky from Clark was there, and Bill from TMP. So there were a lot of experts in the room, and there were a lot of community members that all had something to say, which helps us, at least me, helps me form an opinion, give me more information, think about things that I might not have thought of. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments? Well, I too want to express my appreciation on behalf of myself and the board for the work that you and your team have done. We've met numerous times, had a lot of great dialogue, not only within our strategic planning 2.0, but back at the administrative offices as we prepared for our various meetings. The information that you and your team provided was priceless as we went through this process, and you really embraced that there was no such thing as a bad idea or a stupid question, because there were a lot of ideas thrown out, and I won't say they were stupid questions, but they were, thought-provoking questions at the same time. I think it's important to note that as we looked at this, it was important for us to focus on hand in glove two goals, and that was innovative programming and our infrastructure, because one helps the other. We're not a district of mortar and brick. We're a district of providing the wherewithal to provide the tools necessary for our teachers to work with our students and provide our students with the greatest opportunities. If you think back as it relates to our facilities, we are spending a lot of money, and Jeffrey and your team put together about $7 to $10 a square foot. And when we're underutilizing our facilities, those are dollars that could go back into the classroom, provide services to our kids. And that's important to take a look at that, so that our mortar and brick really matches what our population is. But even more importantly, the mortar and brick really enhances the opportunities for our students. When we took a look at our buildings, it was more than just building a new middle school and enhancing and bringing the other middle school up to those standards, but it was really providing those facilities an up-to-date opportunity for our kids. Because if you think about what the delivery system is for our children today compared to when Muir was built or White Lake was built, is significantly different. And the needs of our students have changed, and the tools that our teachers need to provide a quality education has changed. So it's important to take a look at that. So it's not just dollars and cents, it's really the opportunities that are provided. And I think the point I'm trying to make is that innovative programming and infrastructure could not operate within their own silo. That our infrastructure supports programming, and that's what it's all about. And we need to make certain that we're doing the very best. And once again, I know that our board consistently thanks our community for their support. We often talk about what would this district be like if the community had not approved that zero tax rate increase back in 2019. I can't even imagine what this district would be. Safety and security is extraordinarily important, and this focus on this strategic plan 2.0 really focused a lot on the safety of our students, and that's of utmost importance to me and I know for the rest of the board. So there's a lot to unfold. A lot of information has gone through. I appreciate the committee's work on this. They spent a lot of time going through this. I do want maybe Dr. Salah, if you don't mind, to go back to the timeline, because that was one of the things that we had a lot of discussion about. Because obviously we want to move forward in a very deliberate fashion. We want to move forward as quickly as we can, but we also want to recognize that we need to do this in a process formula, similar to the processes that we follow. So maybe Dr. Salah, you could kind of take us through that timeline for a moment, please.
Sure. So the original intention, or I should say proposal, as was introduced to the committee in terms of the different scenarios. The execution, meaning repurposing Oak Valley, moving students to Muir and White Lake respectively, was intended for the 24-25 school year. I think what's important to lift about that timeline, it was twofold, because we would begin to immediately see the financial benefit by reducing our overall square footage significantly. So it was roughly $500,000 to $700,000 a year is what it would save. Through the process, through all the feedback from the committee, through hearing from our staff who have been watching the videos and reaching out and sharing, well, what about this and what about that? And I'm confident we could have worked 18-hour days in between now and June and gotten it done. But there was just real concern about what if we missed something, and really wanting to be thoughtful and work with the staff and redraw the boundaries the right way and make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's. And so we brought back, based upon that feedback, an updated timeline. And so that includes an implementation in terms of the move to the 25-26 school year. For middle school. And some other key points here. One, we would anticipate a zero tax rate increase bond on the May 2024 ballot. The reason why that's important is because we knew before we even started the strategic planning process that we had $400 worth of needs back in 2018, 2019. But in order for us to continue planning and doing drawings with our architectures and that sort of thing, we need to know that we've passed another zero tax rate increase to begin that work immediately in May of 2024. There's a tremendous amount of work that still needs to be done district-wide. So to know that we've passed a zero tax rate increase bond focusing on school safety and security and instructional programs and infrastructure would be extraordinarily helpful. Tentative timeline to redraw district boundary lines, that would be elementary, middle, and high school, would be fall of 2024. That gives us time this summer to begin really digging in to those boundaries and looking at 5 or 6 different scenarios to make sure that we're balanced across the district and that 4 elementary feed 1 middle, which feed 1 high school. And then, as I mentioned, the middle school implementation will be that 25-26 school year, along with the consolidation of Harbor ATP Community Rec and Ed. And then the administrative building would be in that fall of 2025 as well. And that would also allow us to immediately begin some construction at White Lake Middle School in preparation for the 25-26 school year. I'd like to give our architects the go-ahead in January to begin design work for White Lake with existing bond dollars, and in phase 1 work on some additional spaces there before we even move the kids in 25-26.
Thank you very much. I think it's important to note why we talk a lot about our middle schools, because obviously that's where the recommendations were focused. This bond issue certainly is much more than that. There's a lot of focus on safety and security that affects all of our buildings. We've made enormous gains in the area of safety and security with the last bond issue, but there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. There still needs to be significant renovations that are necessary at our elementary schools and continued renovations and rethinking of our middle schools our high schools along with our middle schools. So I do not want anyone to think that this bond issue is just focused on the middle schools. It's significantly more than that. And as a community member, it's important for us not only to be conscious of what we can afford. That's why there's a zero tax rate increase once again before us, but as a community member, but it also gives us the wherewithal to really have the finances in place for the future so that we can create a district that leads us for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years into the future. And at the same time, recognizing that the dollars that we receive on an annual basis can be used for the classroom, which provide the tools necessary for our teachers and for our students. So I appreciate, once again, on behalf of the board, the work that's been done. We have been deliberate. I feel very good about that we have been very transparent. I appreciate the frequently asked questions segment that is out on the website that will continue to grow. I know Dr. Slaa and the rest of the committee, the community administrative team has already been out and about talking to a lot of teachers, a lot of community members. One of Dr. Slaa's predecessors always talked about sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. I think the recognition and the input that you received as it relates to the timeline was extraordinarily important so that stakeholders had an opportunity to provide input, but more importantly, to be our partners to make certain that this is handled in the best fashion for not only our staff, but even more importantly for our students. So the next step on this was information, just like we do for everything else. This was done under new business. So in 2 weeks, we have a board meeting. This will be presented to us as unfinished business for us to have an opportunity to provide some additional input and to vote on this recommendation that's presented to us. As always, over the next couple of weeks, please address any questions that you might have, board, to our superintendent. As those questions are brought up, he will share them with the rest of the board, as we normally do. We also have available to our community, in the spirit of transparency and gathering information and input, we have a town hall scheduled next Monday. Help me with the time, 6 to 7:30 in the Performing Arts Center here at Milford. So I welcome, once again, stay involved, stay informed. This is an opportunity. It's not going to be live streamed, but it will be put out on our website the day after. So if you can't make it, please take advantage of seeing it almost live the next day. So with that, I see no other questions or comments. We'll move on to the next new business, which we already talked about, which is the 2024 bond initiative, which is Exhibit C. Next piece of the puzzle. So Dr. Slaa.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We've heard quite a bit already about the 2024 bond initiative, but I would invite Mr. Van Gotham to walk through the three-boxer, as well as any other thoughts that he'd like to walk through this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Slaa. The district established a master plan beginning with the 2018 Building Futures Committee, which looked at all the existing infrastructure, including our safety and security, instructional spaces, and overall facilities. The committee determined what things needed to take place in each of our buildings, as the district had not gone through upgrades and renovations in more than 15 years. After a thorough review of our facilities, the committee identified $400 million in overall capital needs. Spring forward to now, and now the district has gone through some major upgrades, including but not limited to safe and secure entrances on 11 buildings, with Milford High School being completed in the next month or so. Through the strategic planning work that started in September 2022, we recognized the need to look closely at our secondary buildings, including middle and high schools, due to declining enrollment over the years. As a result, the 2019 bond started at elementary schools, moved to high schools, and is now poised to wrap up at the middle school level, pending the action of the Board of Education. Plant Moran Real Point, the third party hired to conduct a building needs assessment as part of the strategic plan 2.0, identified over 430 million in needs still remaining. We will be asking the board to support a zero tax rate bond proposal in May 2024 because that really has always been the plan. We continue to have vast needs in safety and security, modernizing instructional spaces, and building needs. That brings us to this evening's recommendation, which is the 3-box you have in front of you. We would be able to sell a new bond in 3 different series, 2026, 2029, and 2032, totaling $361 million. Again, it is zero tax rate increase. This will help Huron Valley Schools continue to provide safe and secure buildings that allow for the latest and innovative programming and are sound from an infrastructure perspective. This is a first read under new business, and it's our expectation and that we will seek a final approval from the board on December 18th to approve a no tax rate bond increase initiative for the 2024 calendar year.
Any questions or comments to Jeffrey? Yes, Member Dodd.
Thanks, Jeffrey, for doing this. And I know anytime we talk about bonds and that sort of stuff, it brings up a lot of questions and concerns and thoughts and the difference in our schools. I think anybody who's wondering how we're spending this money, come check out our schools. It is a world of difference at all 8 elementary schools, and I know the high schools, including the International Academy, are really seeing an absolute world of difference in the first bond. And but there's still a lot that needs to be done. I think it's easy to say we can make do. We're fortunate that we could stop making do after the voters approved the zero rate bond or the zero increase bond and sinking fund a few years ago, and then again the non-homestead again just a few years ago. So our voters have been with us, and I hope the voters will continue to be with us. This is really important to give our students not only a safe and secure place to learn, but also a place that's inspiring and motivating and with interesting things and the colors and everything. It's just a world of difference in these buildings. They went from being just, nice, quaint elementary schools and high schools to really dynamic places for learning. So I'm looking forward to this and to then working on a bond campaign for May of 24.
Other comments? Once again, thank you, Jeffrey, for putting this together. I think it's indicative of the program that was put in place back in 2019, where we structured the bonds in such a way that we had our eye on the ball into the future. And as we talked about earlier, we were able to pay off some debt very quickly. And because of that, we're in a position to be able to do this in such a manner that we can do it in such a way that it's a zero tax rate increase, which is absolutely important and imperative. And it was one of the guiding principles of our Buildings Future program back in 2019. It is also continues to be a guiding principle that we have as a board to make certain that we can do this without increasing the tax rate. This is important to do now so that we can, as Dr. Salam mentioned, begin our planning into the future, and also for you as the CFO to know where our finances are coming from, and as we work towards the future, where our general fund dollars can be spent, which is appropriately directly into the classroom as opposed to brick and mortar buses and things such as that. So I appreciate the work and look forward to future comments. Once again, board, this is a new business. So over the next couple of weeks, if you have any questions, please address them to Dr. Slav, who I'm sure will pass them on to Mr. Van Goten. So with that, I do not have any other public comments. Are there any other public comments? I see none. Good and welfare. Anyone have any good and welfare? Yes, Member Cotter.
Yes, I just wanted to thank our transportation department for bringing one of our big yellow limousines downtown for the Thanksgiving Day Parade. The students always look forward to seeing the bus, and surprisingly, they really disguise the bus with different decorations. But I really want to reach out to our bus drivers who take the time on a Saturday to represent Huron Valley and pass out tons of candy to those kids. But it was a nice parade. The sunshine, and it was very well attended. Likewise, some Huron Valley musicians were also in the parade. So I just wanted to let people know what a nice feature that is for our bus drivers. They're special.
Yeah, anything else for good and welfare? Once again, congratulations, board, for achieving the honor board recognition from MASB. Quite an accomplishment. I certainly respect the time that has taken each and every one of you to achieve that honor. So with that, the meeting.
Really quick, just with the MASB, I wanted to say this earlier, but when I was going through those courses, I felt very well prepared because of a little bit of training from you guys. A lot of training. So a lot of it was stuff that I knew because you guys have been teaching us up. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Go for it. All right, meeting is adjourned.